Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Steve Cromer. I am the chair of the Aberdeen Area Committee. I'm also the incoming chair of the Upstream Oil and Gas Committee. In my previous career, I worked for ConocoPhillips for 20 years. I was chief engineer. So today we're going to give you the results of our survey which we carried out last year. I think it's only right you've given the effort to put the survey together, so we should show you the results of the survey. Very interesting results. So as I said, we gave a survey last year because the committee was trying to work out where we should go with this whole issue of the energy transition. The survey was very successful. We had over 300 responses, and considering that I've seen some surveys that only get about 5 or 6% response, this was very good. It might have been something that I had asked some questions which were very loaded, but that was to invoke a response, and we wanted to get people to respond to these issues because we felt it was very important. And that worked. 300 responses to a survey of this nature is a good result. So what questions did we ask you? So the first one was probably my most loaded question. You can see by the start there, we didn't actually ask you, should we change our identity? We said, do you think that we should change? We do not think. So we've already loaded the question. Change the identity, the core purpose, and potentially mislead with the energy title. So this is all about the whole thing about oil and gas and all these companies now becoming energy companies. And where does the IMechE fit into this? Remembering, of course, that there is actually an energy sector within the IMechE already. So if we change our title, we would have to disappear into a different committee. That's not any value to us. So we're trying to understand where we fit, and we said that we would accept the reality that there is going to be a transition, and should we modify the name to Upstream Oil and Gas Commission? And we got a bit of a mixed response here. We got a no, but asking a question like that and then asking you to give us an answer, yes or no, is quite unfair. So we then gave you an opportunity for comments, and we got some comments. They were excellent. Some people said the Upstream Transition Committee, the Net Zero Energy, which of course has got nothing to do with oil and gas, it's just energy. The Upstream Oil and Gas Industry Transition Committee was another suggestion. And then, of course, we started to get some opinions, which is what we wanted. Stop using misleading transition term. It could take 100 years to transition. Please educate yourself. That was good. And then the alternative, no transition suggests that once the transition is made, the committee will cease to be. Don't think that's going to happen. Oil and gas energy production will continue. I agree with that. And this is the reality that needs to be faced. So this is starting to bring out some of the issues which I think are out there in the industry. Another statement was this would be consistent with the change from the Oil and Gas Authority to the North Sea Transition Authority, government body, changing its name, losing the oil and gas title. And then someone else says leave well alone, which is basically what we got with the final one. We got some more. Here we go. And we got a wide range. Create a green coloured branding. So that's going all the way down the green colour and start looking at that. Another lovely comment, stop following fanatics. I do like the honesty of the people who answer to this. There's a need to be realistic for the use of hydrocarbons in the future. The committee should consider this as an ongoing concern in the short term and an ongoing need in the medium to long term. That, to me, sounds like the voice of reason there. I tend to agree with that. I fully support your stance of being completely honest and transparent. Please do firmly adhere to the principle. So, people want us to be honest and transparent. Be honest and transparent and say that we are the Oil and Gas Committee. That's what we do. That's our business. And then, of course, the next one. Some of your statements come over as apologists for the sector, which I believe not to be received positively. Casting the mission statement with positive statements about being part of the solution could avoid anything that be misconstrued as part of the problem. I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. So we did get a lot of, obviously I've edited out some of the more radical ones, but that's a wide range of the debate. But good that we got that feedback. So let's look at the actual survey results now, and some of them. Should offshore structures be added to our remit? There's an easy one. The answer is yes. Yes, we'll include offshore structures in our remit. So that'll now come under the Offshore Oil and Gas Committee. Now, with the need and urgency to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the necessary upstream oil and gas, we will work to promote technology and methodology required to minimise these. Very much supporting for that. I think the key words there were work to promote the technology and methodology. That's really where the IMechE really fits in. Promoting the technology and the methodology. That's our place. And I think that really supports that quite well. We will promote safe oil and gas production for as long as it's needed to secure global energy supply. So here's the third question, We've got the energy need, we've got the environmental need, and then we've got the global energy security need. All three of these need to be dealt with. Follow the transition for as long as there's a viable source of oil and gas and chemical stock for other industries. So, we're acknowledging that not all the oil and gas which is produced in this world goes into burning for energy. There's other sources, chemical feedstock, etc., as we've found out recently. The third statement, I think this is probably the most powerful one, and it really does drive where we need to be. We will educate stakeholders and policymakers, IMechE members, environmental organisations and the general public about why and where oil and gas is needed and why we should develop it locally and what the market is. What needs to be done to maintain energy security and the requirement for feedstock. We got a very resounding yes for that. Very much so support for that. Now, I want to break that down a little bit more. So educate stakeholders. I think this is the founding thing that we really need to do in this world. There's an awful lot of half-baked ideas out there, and we really need to use our engineering knowledge to educate people, including some of our own members, environmental organisations. They tend to grasp onto one and not look at the big picture. Where it should be developed locally. We'll probably talk about that a wee bit later, about why we should develop energy locally and not ship stuff all around the world and then end up damaging the planet. Statement number 4. We will promote new methods of safety and sustainably producing oil and gas net zero emissions if possible. The planet can take a certain amount of CO2, and we've not got that balance now, we all agree on that fact, but net zero, it can be done, but there are certain areas where oil and gas is the best solution. Aviation, for example, where the energy density of aviation fuel is really, really hard to match without going into very expensive, and I mean expensive both in terms of cost and expense to the environment, expensive solutions. So, statement 4, promote new methods of safely and sustainably producing oil and gas with net zero emissions if possible. Very much supported by the membership. We will address the issues around eliminating methane emissions and promoting methods and technology to achieve this. Now that's the flavour of the month at the moment. I was actually just reviewing a paper earlier today on that about how they were going to be looking at that in the oil and gas industry. But one of my first questions is, well, okay, what about all the rest of the global methane emissions? How is that going to be dealt with? Are we going to be producing a paper on that as well? It seems to be that it's all thinking that oil and gas produce all the methane, which isn't very much not the truth. So we'll address all the issues around eliminating methane emissions and promote those methods. So we've got a couple of things in the pipeline on that. Statement 6, question 8. We will address the issues to deliver zero routine flaring, promote methods and technology to make a reduction. Now, the UK government have got a really good track on this. They've done really well on this. But that's another thing. It needs to be global. All these solutions need to be global solutions. There's no point in the UK meeting its COP26 targets if the rest of the world is now producing much, much more because the UK is reducing its targets. So we need to make those methods and technology to make that reduction possible. We will support the industry's safe life extension projects. So now we know that many of the industry's infrastructure is getting very old. So we need to get those life cycle emissions intensity lower than that of new production. So in other words, use an old oil and gas platform rather than using a new platform or even a new method of producing energy. What is the big picture? How much energy is used in manufacturing these facilities before you get any energy out of it? So very much a big yes on that as well. A lot of the questions very much supported on this. Again, question 10, very much supported. Back to this education. We will educate stakeholders about the high standards of decommissioning in the UK as an incentive to develop indigenous sources of oil and gas, and then get that out to the rest of the world. Because the UK has extremely high standards, and we work to it, and it makes a big difference. And that is an incentive to develop indigenous sources of oil and gas. We will investigate and propose where we need to engage with government agencies to ensure a balanced understanding of technology, policy, methodology, and initiatives. So in other words, we need to get back to the government. You see, the government is driven by policies, things like the COP23 agreements, all of these environmental agreements, but they may go against the technology, the methodology, and the things for a global result. So we need to make sure that we propose and engage with governments. We are the engineers who know the solutions or can work out the solutions, and I'm not sure that the government uses that ability for us to do that. So we will engage with them. I think that's very important to do that. We'll support our membership. So this one got the most. Our membership want us to help us share skills and knowledge to allow them to remain current, aware of relevant legislation, whilst remaining flexible and knowledgeable in all areas of the energy business. So we need to know the big picture. And the membership really wanted us to do that. So I think that's a big takeaway from this survey. We will promote an understanding of realistic timelines. Yeah, you hear about all these people saying, yeah, let's put together a new nuclear power plant. We'll get it done next year. And then you actually see the amount of time and energy and the number of engineers it takes to produce just one that we're working on just now. And then compare that to something like putting up some wind turbines. It takes about a year to put up a wind turbine, but 5 years to get planning permission. So we need to be realistic about these targets. And some of these targets, again, are political. And we as engineers and project managers, we can help them understand that to ensure that expectations are managed and achievable. There's no point in making targets which we're not going to achieve. We need to be realistic about it. We will concentrate on the upstream oil and gas segment. Now we've very much got a split answer on this. We are the Upstream Oil and Gas Committee, but we say we should concentrate on that. And many people said, no, you should be concentrating on the downstream. So we need to take that away and look at that. Look at the downstream side of things. It's split into many chemicals, transport, that type of thing. But we'll look at that further. So that was a big guidance from the survey. Okay, so this is summarising a lot of it. We'll gather information to try to present a balanced study in terms of global greenhouse gas emissions, environmental impact, finance and energy security, and technologies such as stimulation, including fracking. You notice we're not afraid to say the word fracking, not using some other term. We need to be honest and say this is what it is, this is what the impact is, this is the realistic numbers. So I think that's important. We need to present a balanced study in terms of global greenhouse gases. And that's if you can produce those gases from an indigenous source. You know, one of the things that I keep coming back to as an example, I saw this on the BBC and checked the numbers out, and it's about right. So to produce gas in the UK from an offshore platform, bring it onshore and stick it into the pipeline, it takes about 8 kilograms of CO2 to do that. That's the cost in terms of the environment. If you say, okay, we're not going to have any gas production, like the Scottish government said, we're going to shut down all oil and gas production in the future. If we do that, then our alternative is that we're going to ship LNG from some place like Qatar. So you have to produce it, you have to stick it in a pipeline, you have to compress it, you have to stick it in a boat, you have to ship that boat halfway around the world. You then have to decompress it, put it back into the pipeline, and the cost in terms of the environment is 80 kilograms of CO2. But on the other hand, the government have achieved a target where they're not producing oil and gas, so that's what matters, isn't it? The government have achieved the targets, but we've done 10 times more cost to the environment. So we need to be presenting a balanced study in terms of global greenhouse gas emissions, as this statement says. So that's the type of thing we need to be looking at, not just looking at the UK and its targets, the global issue. We will study and advise on the impact of climate change on existing and future oil and gas infrastructure, sea level rises, worsening weather, and we're now talking about platforms and that type of thing. So we need to make sure that's advising people on that. We're going to find out experts, get them to produce papers, produce webinars like this to educate folk. That's going to be one of the features that we're going to do in the future. And then, of course, we opened it right up. Do you have an alternative statement? Now, we got some really good alternative statements. I liked it. One of them, we will focus on supporting our members and development and not waste money on unnecessary studies. There you go. But we'll look at other people's studies and publicise them if we think they're value. You know, if the study's been done and they're good, we'll interpret them and bring them. But I agree with that. We'll not waste money on unnecessary studies. There should ideally be something about building collaboration across industry with other institutions. Yes, there is. That in fact, is something that we're looking at right now to make sure that they all look at that. We will advise, encourage and persist in the education, training and support of young and mature engineers to maintain and develop best practices to secure safe and environmental policies throughout the industry. Yes, absolutely. I would be very careful with what best practice is. I was told by lawyers, never ever use the term best practice. If you use the best practice and then someone develops a new one, you're no longer using the best practice. You should only refer to good practice or good industry standards or good. The best practices is open to legal interpretation. But anyway, I'm digressing. As the industry reduces in size, we still need to maintain the necessary skills in the industry to produce the necessary volumes of oil and gas and provide energy security. So that's true. We need to do that. Some of the statements overlap the other rules of the institution bodies are too specific to one country. Yes, very much specific to the UK. So we need to try to... I see one of the things that's important for the UK is we can develop the technology here and give it to other parts of the world, And if it is an economic solution, then other parts of the world will grab it and they will work with it. And I think that's where the IMechE really does come in. Developing good solutions, good methodologies, good technology, and then allowing the rest of the world to do that. I think that's what's important. Can this group and these overall objectives statements be reviewed with the IMechE main board? That's a very good point. The IMechE main board made the statement that we're going to reduce oil and gas, stop oil and gas production in the UK. And we all went, whoa, hold on a minute. So yes, we need to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do. Carbon capture, absolutely. Carbon capture is a key solution, which has really not been considered here. And the question was, does it fit within ours? And it probably does. It probably should do, because it's very much tied into the industry. So we will include carbon capture. Next statement, IMechE must be presented in all government committees relevant to the UK industry. I agree with that. Politicians, unless they're engineers, are incapable of technical decisions without making professional engineering guidance. Absolutely. We need to give the people who are making these decisions proper engineering technical guidance. Agree with the updated priorities, but feel the change to transition implies an accelerated withdrawal support of oil and gas. Well, no, that's not true. Oil and gas has got to be part of the solution. It always will be. The recognition is essential. Okay, so we've said that we're going to pass other things to the other IMechE committees. I want to see factual studies with support and figures. That's where the strength of an engineer is. An engineer can give figures and then leave it to someone else to make their mind up from that. But our jobs are factual studies, support and figures. And just expose some of these issues that are on the green solutions, because some of them are not green solutions, as I just gave the example there with the LNG. How much energy goes into a wind turbine production from the life cycle? You drive behind cars that says zero emissions, and you think, well, where did the car come from? So those sort of questions do need to be answered. We need to analyse and inform decision makers on the use of electricity. Yep. And all the losses, thermal losses and efficiency compared to direct energy release. And see if there's any ways to solve it. And this is where engineers will be part of the whole solution. I place more emphasis on engineers on the realism behind the energy transition timeline. Okay, the timeline again. Yeah. I very much agree that optimism and stakeholder and time frames are very much political, and we need to be honest about that. And especially with CCS as well, carbon capture. There's currently insufficient evidence that we can achieve the 2050 goals, without damaging the UK, European and the economies. Yes, the economies are going to be damaged. And, all the COP26 goals from Glasgow, they were signed up by a number of countries, but China, Russia and the USA, they weren't exactly signing up to them that fast. So those are the big CO2 producers. Those need to be dealt with. And we need to give to thought as what net zero means to their economies. Yeah, we need to make sure this is a global solution. That's the key to the whole thing, I think. Discussion. So on the discussion here, I'm going to be joined by Matthew Barnett and Patrick O'Hara. I'm hoping that they are unmuting their microphones, and we can take any questions. Do you have any questions for anything on the surveys at all? Are you in there, Matthew?
Yes, I'm here, Steve.
Excellent. Patrick, are you in there?
Yes, I am.
Very good. I don't see any questions piling up inside the question box yet, so we'll hopefully get a couple of those. Um, certainly people were not as quiet when they were giving us a survey. I shall come back into the inbox. No, still not got any questions here. So have you any comments at all, Matthew, on what we're saying there?
Yeah, of course. So for anyone who's on the call, I'm dialed in. My work firewall doesn't allow me to come in through the workcast, so on the telephone today. But my name is Matthew Barnett, so I'm a mechanical engineer. I work for an operator, an oil and gas operator in the UK North Sea, and I recently joined the Upstream Oil and Gas Committee. So as Steve said, I completed the questionnaire and I have my own views based on my own engineering background and the role I perform in upstream oil and gas. I'm also a member of the process industry, so more topsides processing. So my own reflections of the survey are around they probably likely reflect different ages, different roles within the oil and gas industry, slightly different political agendas as they go through time, and also a lack of realisation at a policy level. So I think, having come into the Upstream Oil and Gas Committee myself, Steve, recently, I think the total alignment of what the IMechE's aim is and what it communicates could be improved, and that's something we need to do internally. And as the IMechE, obviously, we need to represent the total membership, so it's taking the feedback from this, obviously resolving what our mission statement and our name is, and then making sure that we integrate properly to sing, one song from the IMechE overall and make sure that oil and gas is represented. So I have a foot in the camp of the energy transition and the technologies and the deployment and being involved in some of those projects as well, and that's interesting, but the transition definitely needs oil and gas. So all of the above is good, and I think we all have a role to play in that, but I think education and communication is key.
Yep. Patrick, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I'd say that I think it's very important that as engineers we discuss and agree the facts between us and then present that to the people making the decisions, rather than perhaps presenting some facts that suit our particular agenda, because where people without an engineering background are receiving conflicting technical information, then that understandably makes it very challenging for them to try and make an informed decision on that. So I think it's important that the different engineering groups do discuss and agree what the facts are, and then let our elected leaders make the correct decisions based on correct facts.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. As a committee, we can bring it together. The IMechE produces a number of papers over the years, and those are long sought after and peer-reviewed. So you're absolutely right. Peer-reviewed solution is probably the right way to give some kind of facts. But I think there is definitely a need to educate people properly, because there's an awful lot of misleading information out there, as you say, to try to promote someone's specific agenda. We've got a question there from Dan Byrne. Why do the panel think there might be 2 to 3 key actions you feel the committee could take as a direct result of the survey? Okay, so what's the 2 to 3 key items? Patrick, you could start with you on that one.
Yes, certainly. I think we need to ensure that we can find a good channel for communicating the right information to the people making the decisions, because I think it's quite easy as a committee to discuss things and agree a position and hold webinars like this, but that's not necessarily getting the correct information to the people who make those decisions.
Yep, I think that's true, absolutely. So still back to that education thing again. Educate and inform with the right information. Matthew, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so for me, it may have come across previously, Steve, but as a member of a number of committees or a number of different divisions within the IMechE, I'm still not quite sure how everything aligns. Now being a member of a committee, I understand the structure, but I'm not quite sure there's a perfect alignment. So what the overall energy policy of the IMechE is, and how the oil and gas industry sits within that and is indeed championed within that. So I think there's a recognition, although not published, that oil and gas is a key part of the energy transition for some time to come, as all of the other technologies become, shall we say, more available and deployed. And I think at an IMechE level, we have to be careful that, you know, the organisation, if they're asked to comment publicly, don't follow a political statement and basically we become ostracised. So it's really establishing our place and the importance of our place in the IMechE and making sure that's consistently understood and communicated.
Yep, absolutely.
And
I'm on
we do, Steve, to be honest. Because a number of the membership, obviously, I know that we had 300 survey respondents, but I think the total registered number of chartered engineers or professional engineers in the oil and gas industry is proportionally higher than a lot of other industries. So we have a huge percentage of the membership with a lot of the skills and ability there as well. So it's making sure that that total skill set and experience is represented as well.
Absolutely. So I think that's absolutely true. And so to give you a bit of a background on that, now that I'm on the chair of the Upstream Oil and Gas Committee, I'm on to a group which is the Technical Action Committee, and we need to get together with all the rest of the chairs and push the promotion. And I must admit that needs to be managed a bit better as well. They tend to just have an agenda, meet every 3 months, talk through the agenda, and that there's no real sort of guidance. So that needs to be sorted out as well. But you're absolutely right. We need to. Oil and gas is a major part of the economy and a major part of the industry, and we do need to have a proper representation in there with the IMechE. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've got a comment there. Matthew's barely audible compared to the others. Yeah, it's just your phone, I think you're on. But you are quite a quiet talker. Okay, there is a question there which I feel is a bit of a challenge, but I'm going to go for it. Welcome to capitalism. Well, you know, this is one of the things that we've been talking about. All these solutions need to have got a cost. And they have got a cost in terms of finance and a cost in terms of the environment. And this is now a new concept. It used to be, let's just make money for the shareholders and make people rich. But I think there's a new understanding start to come in the world where you can say, okay, well, that's all right as long as you don't destroy the environment around about you. So now that I think there is certainly welcome to capitalism. There's always this thing driving on shareholders, but this is where governments can come in and say, right, you can make money provided you follow the rules, and some of those rules should be environmental rules. So I think that question to capitalism is absolutely true. Money makes the world go round. And I also think that that's where the IMechE can really come in. We can develop technology and methodologies where, here in the UK or anywhere in the developed world, which can then be taken to somewhere like Africa and have an impact. And I'm thinking along the lines of, the wind-up radio that guy developed a couple of years back. It's a very small example, but the guy developed a technology here in the world which made an absolutely massive impact and a small environmental one. There's no batteries having to be used for that. But that sort of small movement can make a big difference, especially when you're talking about educating people. So I really think that's where the IMechE can have its real strength, is educating people to start thinking about cost in terms of finance and in the environment. When you do a cost calculation from now on, I think you need to do the both. The shareholders will make sure you think of the finance, and the government needs to make sure that you think of the environment which we live in and the people. So I agree with your comment on capitalism, because that's the way the money goes round. But yeah, that's true. Any other questions there at all? No, I think we're free.
I think we've got one there on how do we manage to be apolitical on the subject but still maintain technical leadership, which is a good question.
It is a good question, but I think that's our strength. The IMechE are a bunch of engineers and we love our numbers and we can present the numbers, but we don't need to give the conclusions. You know, like my example there of 8 kilograms of CO2 for each barrel of gas that's produced, barrel of gas equivalent produced through a pipeline to the UK, or 80 kilograms. All I'm doing is presenting the numbers. I'm leaving you to make your decision on what you think is the right thing for when I start talking about global CO2. I don't need to give the answer. And I think that's our strength. If we give the numbers and state the data behind those numbers and get the facts, it's irrefutable. You know, you need to, and then just leave it, the politics for someone else, to be honest. I really think that's, what do you think, Matthew?
Yep, so and granted, I was on the phone based on that previous comment, so just trying for a bit more volume. Agreed. I think from an IMechE perspective, obviously we advise, and we have advised both close to Westminster, but I think what's important is you present correct facts. So as engineers, we have data, we have information, and we can put reasoned arguments behind those. So from a policy-making perspective, that's a political response. So I think as long as we inform with the correct information, then we are allowing people to make more informed choices, rather than perhaps ones based on a bias or whichever way the political agenda is swinging. But as engineers, we are always going to be driven by data, and I think that's what one of our skill sets is.
Yep, agreed. Patrick?
I would agree, and I don't see this as a hugely political issue in any case at the moment, because pretty much all the major parties are fairly closely aligned on their commitment to achieving net zero, and I think I don't think we're really taking a political side by presenting information that questions what net zero actually means for the world from the perspective of the UK alone achieving net zero.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Okay. We've got a really good point here brought up by Mr. A. Wells, or Mrs. A. Wells, from being on there. Don't forget, we should also support energy demand reduction. Insulation building standards, yes, absolutely. If we can reduce the amount of energy that's required, then we do a favour all the way through the supply chain, etc. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Energy demand reduction, insulation, building standards, etc., Absolutely. Very good point there. Okay, good. Any other thoughts there on energy demand reduction? Because we are getting some really efficient engines now. You know, I've got an old classic Jaguar that does 16 miles to the gallon, or I can get it down to single figures if I really try. And nowadays you can get, you know, enormous amounts, 40, 50 miles to the gallon out of cars by just technology development. So yeah, absolutely. That's true.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think also, in the spirit of what we were saying earlier, we also need to understand what the carbon cost of producing and installing the insulation is, to understand what not just the cost payback period is, but what the emissions payback period is from installing it.
Yep, the manufacturer. Oh, we go down this road now. Here we go. The manufacture of the insulation, the manufacture of the foil on the outside of it, the brickwork, the plaster. You know, when you start calculating all of that, and then thinking of the impact to the cost in the terms of finance and the environment, then it's a complex calculation. We need to get these things sorted out. Simple ways of doing this would be really useful. Yeah.
So we should also, Steve, one of the things that we have as a result of the NSTA is an emissions reduction action plan as the individual operators of the offshore assets. So whilst, yes, domestic heating and insulation building standards is a key source of energy loss, as an industry, we are leading on that. So we have individual, what they're called ERAPs, emissions reduction action plans. So some of our plant is not as energy efficient as it might be. Maybe the plant's oversized, they're turned down. So each operator has looked at where they have the opportunity to reduce effectively emissions associated with power generation. And we also have a commitment to reduce non-routine flaring in terms of emissions as well. So we are looking at energy reduction as really the prime driver for obviously reduction of emissions. So it's something that we are doing at an industrial level and a process level as well. So obviously anything going forward development-wise should look at the most energy efficient system, but we know that our plants change with time. So we are constantly looking at that, and obviously the cost of carbon is a thing, but we're driven to that as well as part of our license to operate. So we should celebrate and we should communicate that we are doing that.
Yep, absolutely. I got a correction there. It's Owen Wells. Apologies, Owen. Okay. Patrick, do you have anything to add to that?
No, nothing more really, unless we've got some further questions, so please do send them in.
No, I think we're, other than being corrected for people's names, then I think we're okay. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, then I think this whole exercise has been really useful. It's put us onto the right path and given us some really good things to work to in the committee, better than just having a little chat every 3 months or so. We now know what we need to do, and support our members is the big thing for me, so that's excellent. So if that's the end of it, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening today, and any other questions, we'll gladly take them and fire them off an email to us, Oil and Gas Committee. Okay,